Hello and welcome to the Dailies on Network Television International, where we will be keeping you updated on the papers. And I am Sela Elisha Dasham. Of course, I have Rachel Tanzi, my co-host. Good morning.
Morning, Sela.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm great. Thank you so much. We'll have the phone lines open later on the show. We're live on Facebook and on YouTube, so you can please do well to drop your comments and your contribution and stories of, effect to you, especially in regards to, we're having the Joint Health Organization have called off their strike, and also we are seeing that Labour is planning not to go on strike, where TUC is saying that for them not to go on strike, the government have to give them a minimum wage of 200,000 and above. So these are part of the stories we will be looking at on the papers this morning. So please just, keep your dial open while we keep you updated with all that's on the paper. And we will be starting with the leadership newspaper.
On Leadership newspaper, 29 days after 16 abducted Kaduna worshippers regain freedom. Alleged 2 billion naira fraud, court discharges, acquit Orensaye and 2 others. You can find the details on page 8. We have a trend. Ekweremadu Senate begs UK court for demency. We have numbers. Livestock contributes 40% to global agriculture GDP. You can find the details on page 2. Maritime workers disrupt port activities over poor pay. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 7. And on subsidy removal, Labour calls out strike after meeting with federal government. The big story on the Leadership newspaper, 10th National Assembly, APC at a crossroads as Yari, Kalu, Ozunaso remain adamant. The writer flowing the story, fight rages on over Senate presidency. Court stops EFCC orders from detaining ex-Zamfara governor. North Central insists on speakership as APC governors back Abbas and Benjamin Kalu. You can find the details on page 4. Tinubu parleys Akpabio Wike Mahi in Aso Rock. Obi Labour Party tender exhibits from 8 states before tribunal. Teachers evade arrest after beating girl 16 to coma with iron rod. You can find the details on page 8. We have a picture story where we can see the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu in the middle. Beside him is Vice Shatima, and at the end we can see Nyesom Wike. And that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
On the Blueprint newspaper, Juhesu suspends strike for 3 weeks after meeting with Tinubu. You can find detail of that story on page 7. Court discharges acquit ex-HOS Arusanya over 190 million fraud. And on fuel subsidy crisis, which is a big story, TUC goes for the Jangula, demands 200,000 minimum wage. With the rider 6 approved living standard, 10 naira per litre intervention fund. Court restrained Labour from Wednesday strike, and then NLC resumed talk with federal government. Kwara Uke's 3-day week for workers. So you can find 3 days per week for workers, and that is in regards to the hardship. You can find more detail of that story on page 6. UBA lead as bank rank in 307.472 billion naira from e-businesses. Talks invade Ogu election tribunal, flock opposition. OPEC lowers Nigeria's 2024 production quarter to 1.38 million barrels per day. And on the 10th National Assembly leadership, Yari takes case to Buhari in Daura. With the rider, ex-Zamfara governor obtained order restraining EFCC ICPC detention. Akpabio Wike Umahi in closed-door meeting with Tinubu. You can find detail on page 5. We still have the picture story showing some of the aides still packing out their luggages out of the National Assembly yesterday. You can find detail of the story inside the paper as well. And that's all on Blueprint newspaper.
Sally, before we move from the Blueprint newspaper, something caught my attention, and that's the writer under the big story that TUC is saying we should have an intervention of 10 naira per litre fund as an intervention fund. And I would just like to say, can we be reasonable in our demands? I know that these associations are doing whatever it takes to make sure that Nigerians' hardship is reduced to the minimal and all of that. But Sele, we've never had petrol being sold since 1999. The least petrol pump price has been 20 naira, and even with fuel subsidy, we've never had petrol selling for 10 naira per liter, and we know that is a subsidy removal. So if you're making demands to the government of how to step in, I would love to see something reasonable, what the government can do, so that you will be in a position to say you are giving a reasonable demand and the government are just being nonchalant towards it. I am seeing 200,000 naira minimum wage, and we know that in some states minimum wage of 30,000 have been passed to bill for over how many years now in the country, for over 5 years, and we still have states that are not paying their workers up to 30. They have not implemented the 30,000 minimum wage. But this is not my concern here. Is when you're asking for an intervention fund where we can buy fuel at 10 naira per liter, and I feel this is not reasonable. Let's give the government reasonable demands that they would be able to adhere to, so that it will be that we've given you a reasonable demand, we've given you something doable, we've given you a blueprint that you can do, but for some reason you are neglecting to do it. But a 10 naira per liter intervention fund, I don't know how they see that the government can't be able to do something like that at this time, where we know even with subsidy for since 1999 we've never had fuel pump price at 10 naira per liter.
I think, Richard, is not TUC is not asking the government for a liter to go for 10 naira.
An intervention.
They are asking for intervention. So for instance, if I'm going to buy a liter at 500 naira and then 10 naira has been taken off 500 naira, so I'm like buying the fuel at 490 naira for every liter, an intervention just to reduce the burden on Nigerians. You and I know how really it is. Right now, very few countries are actually, I say country states. We saw the lowest is Lagos with 488 naira per liter. So if you're taking 10 naira intervention fund for each of those liters, of course it will have a way of reducing it, because the living standard for Nigerians is really, really very, very, we can't even talk
10
about
naira
it.
out of 500 naira.
So, you know, kind of a way, yes, of course, you said even with the subsidy, we've never gotten fuel at 10 naira per liter. It is not possible. Of course, making some demand, we need to make the demand that actually makes sense. So, of course, the government cannot just accept it. This is just part of a demand. Because if you're going to look at it, Rachel, I was opportune to go back 2012 to listen to the back and forth, because this is not the first time we're having issue with fuel subsidy. Looking at from the former, the present Senator-elect Adams Oshomode, when he was the Labour leader, then chairman. And then we're also looking at back then when Sanusi was the CBN governor, and then the back and forth that they were having concerning the first subsidy. And if we're going to look at it, for Nigerian government to keep paying this for subsidy, we are enriching other people. And I think it is very, very possible to have 200,000 naira minimum wage, Rachel. Ask me how. For each of this money that we keep paying subsidy that go outside, I say we can't inject that money back into the economy if we do our maths very properly. You and I were here talking about the cutting the cost of governance, which we do not know how effective it will be. But imagine if we have cut down the cost of governance, sharing it between the people and, of course, the leaders. It is very possible to have 200,000 naira minimum. Of course, there are states that are not generating enough revenue to be able to pay workers that. We can see Kwara have taken it upon itself to have 3 days per week for workers because of how stressful it is. So imagine maybe you go to work from just Monday to Wednesday, or you go from it determines. So to some extent, the government is trying to see how can we reduce this burden. So for that 10 naira per liter, I do not know how effective that will be. So that will be for the government to really decide on that. But for the minimum wage, I think it is very possible to have that. Are we looking at states that don't have revenue? How about $800 million we're talking about intervention fund? Why don't we look at such states? Because part of the thing the government is looking into individuals that cannot afford. So that is to say that the government is going to look at everybody's net pay. Can you afford this? You and I were here talking about back then in the 80s and 90s, for those who start working there and were earning maybe 200 naira salary. If you're going to retire, then they had something reasonable.
They did.
Compared to if you're going to look at our naira to the dollar. But presently, Rachel, even if you're earning 180 or 200,000, when you are retiring, or we're going to look at it, how much is the dollar right now? We're still having struggling whether we're going to have one single exchange rate. So a lot of things will be taken into cognizance. But I am hoping that they are meeting today, right? So whatever the outcome of that meeting will be, because they were supposed to have a strike, which the strike, the court say no more strike, giving them certain reasons. Students are writing WAEC. ASU just came back. Students are still trying to get academic calendar. And we saw where even the electricity worker union were saying they were going to join. We're even having aviation. Some of them say they are going to join. A lot of people, even bankers association, I think, they are going to join. So imagine that means every sector of the economy will actually go down if this strike should actually hold. So we hope that the government will look at it. Yeah, there's some demand that might look outrageous, that it doesn't make sense, but then there are certain demand I believe the government can actually do it, because if you take away the subsidy, it is only fair that look, okay, how can we now help the people? If we are taking subsidy, how do I transport myself to work? Because even my paycheck cannot actually take me through the month. Because right now, the way things are right now, after getting your salary this month, you're thinking about when would I get the next salary. That is for some people that have not even seen the salary. We're talking about civil servants, some say they have not seen salary. Far back March, we saw in the paper because of a loan, we say civil servants and even the military will not be getting their salary on time. So Rachel, how do you expect the people to survive if you don't look at how you can improve that? So I'm hoping that the government will really look into improving the standard of living. If we had all of the three contenders during the election, the presidential election, Peter Obi said he was going to take away the subsidy. Atiku said he would take away the subsidy. The same thing with the APC. Bola Ahmed Tinubu said he was going to take away the subsidy. So right now we're trying to see, if you say you are taking it away and you have taken it away, what are you now going to do for the people? I think it is only fair that the people ask for something in exchange for that. So I think it would only be fair to do that for them.
On New Telegraph newspaper, INEC unlawfully allotted figures to Tinubu at February 25th poll, article witnesses tell tribunal. The writer flowing the story, Guba Poll Tribunal throws out roads, rivers, consolidation application. You can find the details on page 5 and 28. Tinubu meets with Wike Umahi Akpabio behind closed doors, assures J. Husu his government will revive health sectors. You can find the details on page 2 and 5. Non-oil export initiatives boost federal government earning to $1.34 billion. This is a report coming from the CBN. You can find the details on page 3. Alleged 2 billion naira fraud, courts acquit ex HOS Oransanya, and you can find the details on page 3 and 5. Still on insecurity, 3,619 suspected criminals arrested in 5 months. A report coming from the IGP. Residents defy government, observe stay at home. This is ongoing in Enugu, and you can find the details on page 5 and 29. Lagos 10th Assembly, Will Obasa speaks again. We have the big story on New Telegraph. Fuel subsidy removal. Labour suspend planned nationwide strike to reconvene June 19. Federal government gets court order to stop strike. TUC demands 200,000 minimum wage for workers. Kwara reduced work days from 5 to 3 days per week. Tinubu inflicting hardship on Nigerians, a statement coming from Budi George. You can find the details inside the paper on page 2, 3, 4, 28, and 31. And on the 10th National Assembly, leadership imposition will breed executive or legislative acrimony, coming from KAU. Rep summon NEPC MD over unremitted $1.67 billion. You can find the details on page 5. We have a picture story showing leadership of the 10th Senate Assembly, where we can see the president, we can see Senator Abdul Aziz Yari, and we can see Senator Ozdi Uzo Kalu. And that's all the news on New Telegraph newspaper.
On the Vanguard newspaper, Nigerians trade balance record slight decline to 927 billion. SPV saga court declines to order Atiku's arrest, fines Keyamo 10 million naira. And on presidential tribunal, Ubi tenders result of 8 more states in evidence. On the 10th Assembly, court stop arrest of ex-governor Yari. You can find on page 8. With the big story subsidy, NLC TUC suspends strike, with some writers that say Labour and FG to meet again on June 19, 2023. FG, TUC and NLC to establish joint committee to review the proposal of any wage increase or award and establish framework and timeline for implementation. FG, the TUC, and NLC to review World Bank $800 million loan and implementation. All of that can be found on page 5. We have the pictures showing them, the Labour and federal government during the talk on the subsidy. Atiku versus Tinubu, I sign Nasarawa result under duress weakness, tells the court. You can find on page 9. We have some column here where we have for sport and also another on ADB. We have on the Owo attack, survivors groan, families of victims reveal sad experience 1 year after we could record the bomb blast that took place last year there, and some of the victims are just, reviving and also, recounting their losses but appreciating God for life. And coming from Tinubu, counter-terrorism fight must be backed by intelligence. You can find that story on page 9, and that's all on the Vanguard newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, fracas as Ogun Tribunal begins sitting proceeding not affected. Don't hurt intelligence, Tinubu directs security agencies. Jimo Ibrahim rates President's development plan high. Health workers call off strike conditionally. You can find the details on page 2. Obedient win in Nasarawa, Atiku witness tells court. Labour Party tenders results from 8 more states. APC governor supporting Abbas and Kalu coming from Uzodinma. We have a writer that says Apabio Wike Umahi visits Aso Villa. You can start with the details on the front page and continue inside the paper on page 2. Kambari hands over to Bajabia Mila. We have a statement coming from Okiro. Tinubu will end security crisis, and we are hoping that should happen in the country. You can find the details on page 4. The big story on the Nation newspaper, Labour suspends strike plan. Talks between government, TUC, NLC on palliative implementation for June 19. And we have inside the paper, NNPCL pegs ex-depot price at 479.50 naira per litre. Subsidy removal necessary, says Alawopo Hassim. And PwC insists options. We have a statement that says the Labour Centres and the federal government to review and establish the framework for completion of the rehabilitation of the nation's refineries. At the downside of the paper, court dismisses Keyamo suit seeking Atiku's arrest for alleged corruption. And that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
On the Guardian newspaper, Nigerian imports squeezed by cash scarcity falls by 25.8% year-on-year. Empty street, short businesses greet Mba sit-at-home ban in Enugu, which you can find inside the paper on page 28. Steel and petrol subsidy removal, Labour undeterred by court order. TUC demand 200,000 naira minimum wage. You can find that big story on page 6. How proposed NLC strike may affect presidential election petition. Of course, because we remember that even the judiciary were planning to go on a strike. So if the strike had actually held, we've seen that it would have affected the presidential election petition. So that means the petition is still ongoing. You can find detail of that inside the paper. We have Juhesu suspend strike for 21 days after party with Tinubu. Universities and fledgling e-libraries. You can find pictures of that and also read more on page 4. 1 year after attack, Owo Catholic Church remembers victims. And the IMF taxed Nigeria on revenue generation debt management. You can find detail of that business story inside the paper. And that's all on Guardian newspaper.
On this day newspaper, Tinubu orders security agencies to share information intelligence on counter-terrorism, stresses need to completely eliminate insurgency in Nigeria, identifies security as top priority of his government. President will develop Nigeria, says Jimo Ibrahim. You can find the details of that statement on page 27. We have article witnesses insist results not transmitted to IRF at PU. You can find the details on page 10. We have a picture story that shows Abdul Razak critical engagement with labor unions. And the big story on this day newspaper, restrained by court, NLC 2UC reached tentative agreement with federal government over subsidy. The writer following the story, to resume negotiation with government on June 19, established joint committee to review proposal for wage increase, establish framework timeline for implementation, to review World Bank cash transfer scheme, propose inclusion for low-income earners in program. TUC demands 200,000 naira minimum wage, leaves 19 points demand. You can find the details on page 10. We have a picture that shows souvenir for the president. You can find the details inside the paper, and that's all the news on this day newspaper.
On Daily Sun newspaper, activities pick up in Enugu as Umba monitors no seat at home order. IPOB Maso back governor says Kanu's freedom panacea to peace. You can find that story on page 26. And on subsidy removal, NLC TUC suspends strike to resume talk June 19. Federal government labor joint committee to review minimum wage. You can find that on page 6. On Senate presidency, support swells for Kadu Yari as more senators elect join camp. With the rider, APC North Central stakeholders reject party zoning arrangement, insist on speakership. Court fines Keyamo 10 million naira for filing frivolous suit against Atiku. Nigeria's debt stock to hit 70 trillion naira by the end of 2023. And on World Environment Day, Adeleke approved generation of Osun Climate Action Plan. You can find that on page 6. Tinubu at Anti-Terrorism Center, Tax Security Intelligence Agency. And we have shocking revelation at Presidential Election Tribunal with the writer Tinubu APC agent truncate uploading of result in Rivers coming from a PDP weakness. I signed result sheet for Nasarawa State under duress, says another weakness. Obi Labour Party tender more INEC result in 8 states. You can find that on page 8 and 26. There must be transparent election for electing national leaders coming from the PLAC. You can find on page 8. We have a picture story where we can see the governor of Lagos State, among others, during a concert organized by the British Deputy High Commissioner in Lagos State. You can do well to get the paper, read detailed stories of interest to you.
On Nigerian Tribune, court stops EFCC, ICPC, DSS from detaining ex-governor Yari. This is still on the 10th National Assembly. You can find the details on page 16. Court finds Keyamo 10 million naira for filing frivolous suit against Atiku. Tinubu will develop Nigeria, says Jimo Ibrahim. You can find the details on page 15. And the big story on Nigerian Tribune, NLC TUC suspends strike as tentative deal reached with federal government to meet June 19 to agree on implementation framework. Alleged 190 million naira fraud, court discharges acquit ex-HOS Orosanya. You can find the details on page 25. National Assembly proceeding officers, North Central insists on Speaker slot, says SGF was personal compensation for Akume. You can find the details on page 15. Wike Apabio Mahi meet with Tinubu. Bandits kill two farmers, abduct 30 others in Kaduna. You can find the details of that story on page 28. Kwara government reduces work days to 3 for civil servants. Or your constitute salary review committee still on the fuel subsidy removal. You can find the details on page 3 and 5. Drama as talks storm Ogun governor election petition tribunal. Atiku PDP call additional 4 witnesses, tender more evidence. Obi Labour Party tender election results in 8 more states. You can find the details on page 16. We have a picture story where we can see Oyo State Governor Sheyi Makinde discussing with the state chairman Nigeria Labour Congress Comrade Kayode Martins and the state chairman Trade Union Congress Comrade Bosun during a meeting at Executive Chamber Governor's Office Secretariat Ibadan on Monday. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
Right, before we continue with the paper review, we'd love to take this time to actually take a break and then let you choose some of the stories. There's quite a lot, with the suspension of the strike, and then we're seeing some of the demand coming from TUC with one of the demand which is paying of 200,000 naira as minimum wage, and we've seen even the Kwara State government have taken it upon itself to reduce the working days for civil servants to 3 days instead of 5 days. So these are many other stories that what we have been looking at. So when we come back from the break, we will open the lines and also hear your thoughts on the story. Please do not go anywhere. Thanks for staying tuned. It's still the Dailies on Echo Television International. Before we went on a break, we were looking at various stories on the paper, like Kwara State reducing the work days from 5 days to 3 days, and also some of the demand made by TUC, which is a pay of 200,000 naira minimum wage for workers, among many other demands that they make. And the government is hopefully to, they have set up a committee that will look into some of these demands and then review on it and then resume in the next 2 weeks, which is on June 19th. So we'd love to hear what your views are concerning some of this demand and other stories are on the paper. I'm still Stella Elisha Dasha. I still have Rachel with me. Thanks so much, Rachel.
You're welcome, Sarah.
All right, our numbers are displayed. Please do well to call us. Remember to turn down the volume of your TV set when you call us, and also to be very civil with your language. Thanks so much. We will continue with the paper review looking at Nigerian News Direct. Knowledge hoarding is counterproductive to fight against terrorism, Tinubu tells the security agency. You can find that on page 3. Rep Somo Malami AGF orders over 32.5 billion naira missing crude oil. You can find that on page 2. And on 2023 World Environment Day, Polarized Bank restates commitment to environmental sustainability in Nigeria. The big story: court halts NLC, TUC from embarking on nationwide strike. Kwara Oyo governor meet with labor leaders. NLC leaders are acting out script by Peter Obi, coming from Fani Kayode alleges. Increase in fuel price, a deliberate sabotage, coming from the 18 CSOs. You can find that on page 3. We have cross-section of various stories on the front page of the paper. Do well to grab the paper and read more details of interest to you.
On New National Star, Nigeria's crude oil production may hit 1.7 million as OPEC increases output. You can find the details on page 15. Court orders Keyamo to pay Atiku ICPC 10 million naira. Nigeria's electricity export crashed by 27%, $58.1 million in 1 year. Federal High Court acquits former HOS Orasanyi of fraud. You can find the details on page 3. And the big story on New National Star: fuel subsidy. Court stops NLC TUC from planned strike. NLC TUC Ubi Court orders suspend strike. Parties to continue negotiation on wage increase and palliative. Pastor to die by hanging for multiple murder. This is happening in River State. You can find the details on page 20. We have New National Star newspaper, WAANSA partner on campaign against drug abuse. Atiku Tinubu not qualified to be declared president, PDP witness tells tribunal. At the downside of the paper, PDP accuses APC of attack on its members, journalists at Ogun Election Tribunal. Nigeria's merchandise trade hits 12.046 trillion naira in the first quarter of 2023. Cross River Governor appoints Abuja NUJ Chair Obeche Chief Press Secretary. You can find the details on page 17. We have a picture story where we can see the Chief Justice of Nigeria, and that's all the news on New National Star.
On the first news, we have NNPCL pegs ex-depot price at 479.50 naira per liter. You can find detail in the paper. First subsidy, big fraud, says Ipman. You can find more because we remember Ipman were in support and they were actually praising the government for taking away, the first subsidy. And, on the paper again this morning, they're saying that first subsidy, it's a big fraud. So we hope to see what the government will do in regards to that. House invites Emifede over 32.5 billion naira payment without records. Family cries out over illegal sale of mysteriously missing businessman property. Accuses estranged wife, lawyer, and police of conspiracy. You can find detail in the paper. Subsidy removal, which is a big story finally. NLC, TUC suspend planned strike after court restrained both union affiliates from Wednesday industrial action leaders meeting with federal government team at Asuvida. On subsidy crisis, increased workers' minimum wage to 200,000 naira. TUC tells the federal government. We never endorsed Kalu for Senate presidency, coming from the ACF. House invites Emifede still over the 32.5 billion naira payment without records. 109 million fraud court clears ex-HOC Arusanya. Talks flock PDP Guba aspirant orders outside Ogun Tribunal venue. You can find detail and see the picture story on that. All right, we have a caller. Good morning, sir.
Okay. The subsidy they remove. Yeah. The subsidy they remove. I don't know why they remove it. You understand it? Because when you look at it, before they remove the subsidy, everything is a higher cost. Go to the market, buy food stuff, everything is high. Both people are doing business, transportation is high. Now, remove the subsidy, it is double the transportation. Just like now, from here to Nasarawa State, it took almost 6,000, but now they collect almost 10,000 from Kaduna to Nasarawa State. That is wrong. It's no good. It's not everybody can afford the money. Only that our leaders are criminals. Has pollution. This petrol we are talking about is our petrol. We are not buying it. It's from Nigeria here. We are not importing petrol. Petrol is God given. You understand it? This petrol is our own. We are not buying it. I don't know why everything is very high. But I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes I'm thinking that I don't know what our leaders normally travel out. But when you go to other countries, you see how everything there is arranged. Despite that they are corrupt, but Nigeria own is the higher end. They are higher. That is, they are higher, they are corrupt. It's very, very high. Do not have God fearing. Okay, Buhari have already come down. Those money that Buhari borrowed in his regime, in his tunnel, where is those money? What do you use it for? What do you use it for? Now we enter triple hand again. See, now petrol, now buying petrol now 550 naira. Everybody don't have petrol. If you go to have petrol, you be on queue. A liter 550 naira. Buying 50 liters costs you almost something thousand. That is no good. This petrol is our petrol. We are not buying it. It's free of charge God give us. Why are we troubling ourselves like this? Killing the poor people. I don't know where they're packing the money to. Are you stealing money? You're packing it to where? Please.
Thank you.
Everything in the market is very costly. Okay, now for us to transport goods from Lagos, one truck, only transport, pay a trailer, carry car come here, it's almost $1 million now. But before, it's just 300, 400,000 you can transport goods from Kaduna from Lagos to Kaduna. When good luck wasn't it. But now it's $1 million and only transport alone. That's no good. This thing is we doing ourselves. We know the bad people, we are still supporting them, and we are still putting them on seat. They are still humiliating us, they are still killing the poor people, they are still doing all kind of devilish things.
Right, thank you so
This
much.
also there is money. We have money. This money in our account, where are they keeping it for? What are they using it for? That's my own business.
All right. Thank you so much.
Telling me that Nigeria don't have money is a lie. Nigeria have money. Nigeria have money. To kill one container in the world is almost 8 million. How many containers they kill every day? Where do those money enter? Is it enter my account? Either a container is in war is almost 8 million. In a day they kill more than 500 containers. Where did the money enter for?
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much to that caller. And just to rectify one or two things he said, we are not buying the fuel. We are because we are not refining it. We have the crude oil, no doubt about that. But then, do we refine it in the country? No, we have to sell it out, or we have to give it out and then buy it back again, because we do not have refineries. And that's why part of the things the union are saying is the fact that we need to revive.
Other state, you said they gave the workers 3 days per week.
Yes,
I think that's a reasonable something to do for the government. If the legislative yourself, the Senate, the House of Reps, we sit sometimes once in a week, 2 times a week, and are collecting millions a month, why not the workers who are working for those money every day? Common minimum wage of 30,000, they can't even pay them. I think they should also be working one day per week to caution this effect of this subsidy. I just came from Plateau yesterday. Formerly, I used to pay 15,000 for transportation, but when I was coming yesterday, it was 20,000 naira, for Christ's sake.
From where to where?
For a worker who is earning, let's say for instance, 50,000 naira, and before now he's paying 15,000 for transportation, and then now the transportation is double. He's going to be paying 30,000 naira. Will 20,000 be enough for him to feed his family, pay house rent, pay school fees? It's not justifiable. The federal government should look at this. Because it pains me to see that the Senate would just sit down once in a week or twice a week and they're collecting millions. But these workers go to work every day, almost 20-something days in a month. And you're not paying them well, and now you're removing subsidy, for Christ's sake. Let the government be considerate. If they want to do something, if they cannot add to the salary, I think they should also tell the workers, come once a week. I think that would be fair, so that they don't waste their salary on transportation. It doesn't make any sense. Government to look into this, please. We Nigerians are suffering. We are not saying they should remove the subsidy, but if you are removing it, have a plan for it. 2012, when Goodluck want to remove it, these same government people, Tinubu and others, they went on public, what is it called? And now he just came and he just removed everything completely. Why not remove it in phases? So that Nigeria will prepare. If maybe today you move, let's say you start with 20 naira, 30 naira, and then you prepare Nigerians for the future. Or you just come and you remove everything and we are suffering the effect now. For me, I don't, even the labor that they're suspending that strike, I don't know why they're suspending that strike. They should have gone with strike. Let government meet their demand for Christ's sake. Let them listen to us. Sometimes the labor, I don't even trust them because you look at it when they go there and they just give them something, they just forget about us, the masses. They are not even fighting for us. Like Oshomole, when he was there, we thought he was fighting for us, but when he became a politician, he became something else. They are not fighting for us. I don't see what they are doing. The masses should know what to do. We are praying that God will help us because what I believe that it's only God that will help us in this country, and I trust one day God is going to deliver us from their hands. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You really made some quite very interesting, important points. And just like I was saying, we buy the fuel because we do not refine, and that's why part of the thing the union is saying, let us revive some of these refineries that have been lying down there. Let us revive it so we get to refine our oil in the country. Another thing he said was the fact that there's no argument. Nigerians are going through a lot of hardship right now. There is no argument about that. Even the government are aware of that. And that is why I believe that they are going to see reasons into why the union is saying 200,000 naira minimum wage. Does it look impossible? Yes. But is it impossible? No. Because I believe, just like the last caller was saying, appreciating the Kwara state government for making workers to go to work 3 times, trying to reduce the cost of, and we're talking about reducing the cost of governance. Part of the thing he was saying, maybe reducing the allowances of the members of the House of Representatives and also the Senate. So we're seeing that if that is a way we can move forward as a country, it's not bad if we have some of these things being cost, some of the things that are really not necessary. We have another call. Hello, good morning.
I'm speaking with Equa TV.
Yes, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from? Hello? Hello, are you there? I think we lost that call. So we hope you call us back again. So that's just it. But we hope that the right thing will be done. The first subsidy is gone, just like he said. Everybody loves the fact that it is gone, but then the hardship that comes with it, we need the government to be prepared to take care of its citizens because that is your responsibility, to protect and also to provide for the welfare.
Of fuel subsidy.
All right, sir, go ahead, please. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
If we can continue in this condition of fuel subsidy, we are talking of Buhari. Buhari has come and gone. And instead of us to be patient and sit very well before adopting anything, we come and add more problem again. People cannot even go out again. A journey of 1 hour, you pay 5,000. Is it good? We have children that are going to school. We can't pay their school fees again. They going to working place and come back. Ordinarily, before you collect your salary, transport has already collected everything. Where are we going in this country? We are blaming. We continue to blame the person on this thing. We have National Assembly. We have a Senate. We have all the 3 arms of government, and nothing is done positively. Every now and then we continue to blame. Who is even the person that is causing this problem? We want to know in this country so that we know where we are going. We need peace. We don't want any problem in this country. We need peace. How can this generation come to be another thing? People who are in government before, if the time of Gowon, Shagari, and the rest president are like this, we wouldn't have reached today. We need peace in this country, please. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. So we just hope the government will really listen to the plight of the people and do what is expected of them to do at a time like this. Well, Richard, you have something to add up?
Well, the callers have said a lot, Sele, but it still boils down that corruption is still eating deep into Nigeria, and until we're ready to fight it, truly fight it, Sele, not selective fight of corruption, but really fight corruption, we will see little or no growth. And secondly, implementation is key. And that is where the hardship is because...
let's take this call. Hello, good morning.
All
right, go ahead, sir.
Yes, it's just the issue of the fuel subsidy. People are speaking a lot. Hello?
Yeah, we're with you. Go ahead.
People are talking a lot. But if you observe it, they could have started with the issue of 400. You know, this 555 naira you are seeing is very much. But if it is 400, people at least will understand and the thing will be growing gradually. Before it is 189. And from 189, people know that the subsidy will be coming up, but it jumped from 189 to 555. So it's very much to the masses. That's why everybody is complaining. But we don't know what to do. Rather, we hear and we bear the burden because the poor men are bearing the burden. So we are praying that the government should be looking into it. Those who don't have government worker, what are they going to do? Some of us who are not government worker, how can we get the money? If they want to give any palliative, they should send it to everybody account. Even if it is 50,000. Try to reach everybody. But palliative will only reach few people within the environment, especially those who are in the community. But there are those who don't know anybody in the community. So that's my contribution.
All right, thank you so much. We hope the government know how to share that money as expected.
So.
I remember last year when we were looking at some of the funds coming from the state government. I know of about 2 people or so who got the money. I think one of which was a student that got that 4,000 naira. Even though it's not really much, it won't do anything. But then if everybody can actually say, yes, I got something little out of it, I mean, it will go a long way to do something. So we hope the government will know how to share that. Well, that's all on the First newspaper.
On Teen Trust newspaper, exam malpractice, WAEC arrest proprietors, supervisors, and others. You can find the details on page 4. Anambra students emerge runner-up in global SDGs competition. You can start with the details on the front page and continue inside the paper. 16-year-old student of Usman International School launches maiden book. You can find the details of the book inside the paper on page 2, the book titled The Blue Moon. We have column for lifestyle, which you can find on page 7, career page 5, and well-being on page 14, and also short stories on page 10. And that's all the news on Teen Trust.
On Business Day newspaper, airlines $812 million trap funds increase pressure on FX external reserve. And here's an explain. I said, here's why NLC cannot lawfully call for strike over subsidy removal. Increasing revenue, managing expenditure would address Nigerians' debt issue coming from the IMF. And tribunal hears argument on 25% in FCT. Stock of major oil marketers hit new high as subsidy goes. Instrumental payments for solar gains traction. You can find more of that on the front page and on page 2. And we have a picture story showing some of the celebrities we have from the Nollywood, the likes of Ramsey Noah and others. You can do well to grab the business and see how they are contributing to the GDP of the country. And that's all on Business Day newspaper.
On Sporting Sun newspaper, Villarreal, we can't stop Chukwueze from leaving. Tottenham tells Real Madrid to pay £100 million for Kane. Ibrahimovic retires from football aged 41. Forest plans bid for a Iheanacho. You can find the details on page 6. Super Eagles to open camp for Sierra Leone June 11. Finidi on cloud 9 over Eyimba's first win. Messi may snub.
All right, let's take this last call. All right, go ahead, sir.
Somebody, one of our colleagues has just complained of 400 naira. What do you mean by 400 naira? 400 naira for a liter. We are crying on top of 200 naira before, and somebody is talking of 400 naira, and people were just managing their life. We are imbalanced. We are not balanced in this country. Let us be balanced now, so that they can be talking of increasing of fuel subsidy or fuel price. Let us be balanced first of all. We are not even balanced. A day announcement, everything turn Nigeria upside down. We need peace. How can we continue to be in this condition? May God have mercy on us all.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think it was just his own point of view. I don't think he really meant what I understood, not 400 now, but the hike was just too high for Nigerians to take as of the moment.
That's the increment he's trying to explain, was 400 plus to what it is currently now.
Yeah. So I think maybe the government have made something, on ground for the masses, and then the fuel was increased to maybe 400 or 300, even at 200 Nigerians were complaining.
True.
But then I think Nigeria would have really felt the effect a little, not as much. I think that was what he meant, if I understood him clearly.
True.
Yeah, so I think is that all on Sporting Sun?
No, we have a few more stories on Sporting Sun. Messi may snub £1 billion Saudi offer for Barca return. Chelsea ready to break British transfer record for Vinicius Jr. Benzema agrees 2-year deal to join Al Ittihad. You can find the details at the back page of the paper. We have El Carres Djokovic move closer to French Open showdown. You can find the details at the back page of the paper, and that's all the news on Sporting Sun.
All right, I think that's how far we can go on the program this morning. Thanks so much, Rachel, for doing
Sarah.
this with me. Thank you to all our callers who call in this morning and make the program very impactful with your very important comments and thoughts on the stories. Until we come here again, please do remember to be peaceful and be your brother's keeper.